Hello and welcome to Mary Live. This is Dr. Mark Miravalle. My friends in Jesus and Mary, the recent DDF document, Dicastery for the Doctrine of Faith, concerning Mary, continues to raise, I think, important questions and unfortunate confusion. And so I want to go over some of the previous concerns with the document and unfortunately add a few more concerns that I think really require an explanation and a clarification, because it is, as one Vatican journalist said, it has really opened up a hornet's nest globally. Now, on the positive side, there are now millions of people, who now know what the Church teaches when it uses the title co-redemptrix, that in fact it is a reference to Mary's subordinate, unique subordinate role with and under Jesus in the redemption of the world. Perhaps that was not clear in headlines of individuals and journalists saying, the Vatican, the DDF, nixes the co-redemptrix title. But in reading and in commentary, it's true to say millions of people now know what the Church teaches when they use the term co-redemptrix for Our Lady. And for this, we have to be grateful to the DDF for bringing this now to world discussion. And it is a vibrant, dynamic, sometimes heated world discussion. Who said Mariology was boring? Huh? And so, but let's go to the specific points. Let me just quickly summarize what I've already mentioned in more detail in a previous webcast regarding the DDF document in terms of a brief commentary, which you can find on motherofallpeoples.com. So first of all, the title co-redemptrix. So after there is a competent summary of the Church's history and teaching and magisterial examination and promulgation of the role of Mary in the redemption with and under Jesus, they then state in number 22 that is now, quote, always inappropriate to use the title co-redemptrix. Of course, the document uses the title co-redemptrix to explain it, and that's why we have to use it as well. It's part of the discussion. But originally, it was stated that it would be inappropriate, and then 2 days later, the Vatican released a new version of the English to match the original Spanish, evidently, that it's always inappropriate. When you have St. John Paul II, 7 times using the title, when you have Pius XI, 3 times using the title, and both of them, quite frankly, giving very beautiful and theologically accurate explanations of what the title means. Unfortunately, that was not contained in the document. There was just a quick reference to the usages, and that's why many have pointed out, even those who are not necessarily in favor of a Fifth Marian dogma, have pointed out that the document lacks a certain objectivity, a certain parity. But the confusion comes clearly when you have popes and saints and mystics using the title. Sister Lucia, by the way, who's not magisterial, but has the respect of so many, refers to Mary's co-redemptrix 8 times in her last major writing, Calls or Echoes of the Message of Fatima, where she gives, in one sense, two occasions, one-page explanations of what the title means. So this is clearly a traditional title, but it's also a contemporary title, and hence, when the DDF said it is never appropriate to use, that has understandably caused great confusion among the faithful. Now, it's also significant that, again, Cardinal Newman, now St. John Henry Newman, Doctor of the Church, also defended the title and talked so much about how you should consult the laity when examining the possibility of a Marian dogma. Well, the laity, the Vox Populi Mariae Mediatrix movement, has brought forward 8 million petitions, which in fact were presented, 6 million of them directly to Cardinal Ratzinger. I know that because I was part of that process, with the Federal Express receipts for the boxes and the counts of 6 million at that time. That was 1998, and from that time to this time, at least another 2 million petitions that were sent directly to the Vatican, particularly the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith. And so that's a loud statement. That's actually the largest petition drive in the history of the church per annum. And so this is a strong statement if we're seriously considering synodality and listening to the voice of the people as directed by the new doctor of the church, St. John Henry Newman. It's also interesting that Pope Benedict, and we have to bring up the Cardinal Ratzinger Pope Benedict issue, but Pope Benedict said on May 13th, 2010, that we are called, he in fact called the sick at Fatima to become, quote, redeemers in the Redeemer. All of us who are suffering are called to be redeemers in Christ, the one Redeemer. That's a lot of Redeemer language. Clearly, you wouldn't leave Our Lady out of that process if it's something that's, true for us. And so, again, understandable confusion when you're denying a title that has been so richly used both in tradition but also in the post-conciliar church. St. Teresa of Calcutta was a strong advocate for the title, also for the proclamation of the Fifth Marian Dogma, and wrote a letter to that extent. Let's now move to the second issue, and that's Mediatrix of all graces. Once again, if you want a fuller treatment of these, you can go to a previous podcast called New Vatican Document on Mary, a brief commentary, that's found on motherofallpeoples.com. Regarding Mediatrix of all graces, we have a very serious issue of what appears to be a denial of 4 centuries of papal teaching on the doctrine. So it would not be accurate to say that the DDF document did anything against the doctrine of Our Lady's role in the redemption. There were parts that could have been a little bit stronger, especially if they included some of the papal magisterial texts. Nonetheless, it still articulates Mary's unique role in the redemption with and under Jesus. Unfortunately, that's not true about the treatment of Mediatrix of all graces. There are several lines in the document which state that Mary had no secondary causality universally in the mediation of graces. Now, let's bring in the issue of Cardinal Ratzinger here. As I mentioned before, the document rather conspicuously skips over 4 centuries of papal teaching. It's not even referred to in the document as it was done for Mary's role in the redemption in the first part. So, once again, 4 centuries of papal teaching, 4 encyclicals, at least 10 individual pronouncements. Again, St. John Paul II used the title Mediatrix of all graces on 8 occasions. That's all left out of the document, and that begs the question, why? Many legitimate theologians and faithful have asked, and clergy, why would you bypass the papal magisterium on a doctrinal issue? I want to go to the issue of Cardinal Ratzinger here, and also in reference to the Mediatrix of all graces as well as co-redemptrix. The document, I mentioned this in the previous commentary briefly here. The document seems to quote Cardinal Ratzinger in certain dimensions clearly more than it quotes popes, especially Pope John Paul II and Pope Pius XI with the co-redemptrix, but also it quotes Cardinal Ratzinger against, again, 4 centuries. There's no exaggeration with that. You're starting with Pope Benedict XIV in 1749, who says that Mary is the celestial stream through whom all graces flow, and all the way up through Pope Leo, who on August 15th, 2025 made reference to Our Lady as Mediatrix of Graces in his letter to Cardinal Schönborn. So, but back to Ratzinger for a second. Cardinal Ratzinger, in 1996, in the statement they quote, never said anything against the title intrinsically. That's simply fact. What he is referring to is that it was his opinion in 1996 that the doctrine, the titles were not mature, meaning it needs more development. Well, going back to Cardinal Newman, St. John Henry Newman, it would be good to consult the laity for that. And then he would see, indeed, the massive response. By the way, it's not just the laity. There's 8 million faithful from 150 countries who have sent petitions for this definition. There's also 700 bishops. That includes 60 cardinals. So about 640 bishops and 60 cardinals who have asked for this definition, which begs the question, were they inappropriate? Were all the faithful inappropriate? If it's always inappropriate, you get the idea. There's concerns about the generalities of some of the statements involved here. Cardinal Ratzinger did not speak against the theology of the doctrine or of the title intrinsically. His concern was that it needed more maturity, more development, more, in fact, discussion, right? Which leads to development. But please note this, my friends, because this is a glaring omission / confusion foundation that comes forward for the document. Cardinal Ratzinger then becomes, as we know, Pope Benedict XVI. As Pope, please note, Pope Benedict never said a word against Mary's title as co-redemptrix. Not a word. Was he aware of the ongoing discussion? Of course he was. He had had a direct role in various statements regarding private revelations that clearly dealt with co-redemptrix, mediatrix, and advocate, and even a solemn definition. And he not only allowed that to go forward, but in certain cases, he encouraged the bishop to do that which he felt was appropriate at the time. Be that as it may, as Pope, please note, he uses the title Mediatrix of all graces. He does on January 10th, 2013, to Archbishop Zimbabwe, as he is directing him to lead the World Day Prayer of the Sick on February 11th, 2013. That's why it was released that day. It was actually released on the same day that Pope Benedict announced that he would retire from the papacy. So Pope Benedict used the title Mediatrix of all graces. Even, I think, more glaring in terms of a contradiction, and again, we have to have respect for the DDF. It is the doctrinal commission of the church. I'm simply bringing up what theologians are obliged to based on Donum Veritatis. When there's issues that cause confusion or could add to the clarification, that document says, that's the document of Cardinal Ratzinger and the CDF at the time, to the role of theologians. This is what we're simply supposed to do, is bring up questions for clarifications when it's for the good of the church. The document, the DDF document, says repeatedly that Mary has no role in the secondary mediation of grace. Okay. So we all got that. The document is saying Mary has no role in the secondary mediation of grace. It talks about secondary causality. Please listen to the following statement. This is Pope Benedict XVI on May 11th, 2007, at the Brazil canonization of the Franciscan priest Father Galvio. These are the words, quote, "There is no fruit of grace in the history of salvation that does not have as its necessary instrument the mediation of Our Lady." Yeah, we will do that one more time, because this is Pope Benedict as Pope. Remember, my friends, the difference between a cardinal and a pope is when you're Pope, the whole world is praying for you at every Mass, by name. All kinds of graces can happen. That's why be careful to equate a cardinal statement with a Pope statement, even if it's the same person. This is just history and reality. Again, Pope Benedict teaching exactly what this DDF document appears to contradict. Quote, "There is no fruit of grace in the history of salvation that does not have as its necessary instrument the mediation of Our Lady." Well, there you have. That means Pope Benedict both used the title, Mediatrix of all graces, and taught the doctrine expliciter. Hence, again, the confusion and the critical need for clarification. Now, let me move on to the issue of ecumenism. It's hard to surface all of social media, but it seems like those that the only websites I've seen really rejoicing in this new document are Protestant websites. In particular, to summarize, and there's always danger in generalization, so bear with me. The summary, the headlines are, Pope Leo rejects Mary's role in salvation. And most of the sites are rejoicing because I think they see what they think the document means to say, finally, it's Christ alone. The classic Lutheran concept, the classic Protestant concept, that Jesus alone saves us without any role of us participating, let alone Mary's unique cooperation. Now, to be fair, the document doesn't say that, but those are the headlines, that finally the popes have come to the realization that Jesus saved us without any participatory, any contribution from the Mother of Jesus, which is the undeniable doctrine of the Church. It's also been noted that it doesn't look like a lot of Protestants are now standing in line for RCIA to immediately jump into the Catholic Church, because this has finally been clarified, and now the great ecumenical block has been removed for them. I also want to say something that has been, to my knowledge, not yet strongly articulated, and that is the DDF document, in speaking to many Orthodox Christians. We're not talking about Orthodox Catholic, right? We're talking about Orthodox Christian. Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox. Many of them are very upset with this document. Why? Because they firmly believe that Mary mediated all graces, both uncreated grace with Jesus and that which comes to us through Jesus. So that Mary is the mediatrix of all graces is a constant, dynamic theme among Orthodox Christianity. One Orthodox website put up a quote by Gregory Palamas, one Orthodox champion of the 15th to 16th century, talking about that God has willed that all graces come to us through the mediation of Mary. There's also a Theophanes of Nicaea, who sounds like a 15th century St. Maximilian Kolbe, who says, again, all the graces of the Spirit also come to us through the mediation of Mary. Can we see the potential harm to ecumenism that this is causing? And again, one can't anticipate every reaction to this, but now we do know, we are seeing that the document as written is seeming to convey to Protestant Christianity that Mary, and therefore none of us, have any role in the redemption, apart from the uniqueness of what Our Lady does as the new Eve with the new Adam, and also that this is an ecumenical difficulty, as one author said, blunder, in our relationship with the Orthodox, because they so clearly believe in Our Lady's secondary mediation of all graces. Of course, we all believe that Mary is not a goddess, that Mary is not equal to Jesus. Neither the Catholic Church nor Orthodox Christianity has ever posed that. And so, a constant kind of comment is, why now? Why did this seem to be so important now? And again, just to summarize what commentators are saying, that of all the issues in the church right now, is Our Lady's role as co-redemptrix and mediatrix of all graces seriously a headline issue? Is it an issue that really merits a separate doctrinal note? Now, I also want to get to an issue that is dear to my heart, and that is, and I'm just going to speak frankly with you, in my 40 years of teaching university theology and being in some sense in the public domain of teaching, I have never, like this last week, received more emails, more messages about people saying that, quote, my faith has been shaken by this document. That's an end quote. One gentleman said, I was paralyzed for 2 days. I didn't know what to do. Now, what does this mean? If we're going to be pastorally sensitive in a proper sense, we have to listen to these people. Why would it shake their faith? Because they said, well, we've got a doctrinal note that's contradicting, which is here, right? I mean, in a certain sense, a doctrinal note from the DDF should be taken with respect. Absolutely. Was it signed by Pope Leo? No. Was it presented to him in audience and he accepted an audience? Yes. But that's the most remote, that's the lowest level possible, at least in general, papal approval, in quotes, that you can get of a document. To say that this is the clear mind of Pope Leo, I think good people could differ about that. But you have a doctrinal note here on the level of a Vatican office, a doctrinal office. And up here you've got 4 centuries of papal teaching, as well as repeated papal usage of the title co-redemptrix. Apart from the confusion, people have been relaying, like never before in my teaching history, my career, as imperfect as it is and whatever, they're saying, who do we trust? That it's shaken their faith in the papal magisterium. And to these people, I want to say clearly and from my heart, do not let this document shake your faith in the papal magisterium. Where do we go as Catholics in times of difficulty, in times of lack of clarity? We go to the Vicar of Christ. He is our rock. This is no time to jump ship. The last thing Our Lady would want is for you to jump ship from the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church because of potential confusion coming from a doctrinal note. So what do we do with things like this? We remember that the Holy Spirit protects the Pope on matters of faith and morals based on, as Lumen Gentium 25 says of Vatican II, based on the nature and the character of his words and the document in which it comes. We can always trust, my friends, in the central message of encyclicals by the Holy Father. And I'm not saying it's only encyclicals, but that's the ordinary mouthpiece of the Vicar of Christ. I believe that the Holy Spirit has always protected the Vicar of Christ in matters of faith and morals, even when he's not speaking infallibly. That cannot be shaken, my friends. This document, and I've granted the confusion and understanding of common people. One person said, does this mean I have to stop praying the rosary? I mean, that's the level of confusion that's out there, and that's why it's so important, God willing, that there will be a clarification. And perhaps that clarification has to come directly from the Holy Father this time to make clear that indeed he continues to teach one with the papal magisterium of the past. Now, Pope Leo already beautifully taught that he said there was an unimaginable leap of faith for Mary when she goes to the cross as the new Eve at Calvary. And she participated in the redemptive death of her son. That's gloriously the doctrine of Mary's co-redemption. Or, if you want to phrase it, Mary's unique, unparalleled role with and under Jesus in the redemption. That's there. That's the doctrine. That's powerful. That's beautiful. Because the new Eve does capture exactly the truth that is traditionally captured in the title co-redemptrix, with a further development of history. So, my friends, if you have experienced a certain shaking of your faith, please be in total peace. Realize that sometimes heaven allows odd paths to its ultimate desired goal. I believe the ultimate desired goal of heaven is a solemn proclamation of a fifth Marian dogma. If there was ever a time to clarify now global discussion and in many cases confusion. Now seems to be the time for a definition that could do that. I'm not saying today or tomorrow. I'm saying don't lose hope in Pope Leo, who is our rock, to get us through the present challenges and difficulties. Trust in the Vicar of Christ. And again, I'm not talking about interviews. I've said in jest, I think the next canon law should be that the Holy Father not speak into any mic that has the press at the other end of it, but rather using the classic means of communication like encyclicals and whatnot. Be that as it may, that's a secondary issue. But for us, for our faith, we peacefully and confidently keep our faith on our Holy Father, on clearly but not exclusively his papal teaching. And many have asked, is this a time to write to the Holy Father? I think, look, any time is a time you can write to your father for something you think is important for the family. That's Canon 212. And that's why, quite frankly, and I'm saying this as honestly as I can, the movement for the Fifth Marian Dogma has been greatly galvanized by this DDF statement. Of course, the statement in no sense limits the ongoing movement for the Fifth Marian Dogma. So have a respect for what your heart tells you when you have been properly formed with a Catholic conscience and you have your relationship with Our Lady. You know who she is. You know the truth. You know the truth about her roles, her unique role in the redemption, her mediation of graces, her advocacy. All of that is part of her spiritual motherhood. So yes, I think it can be a very reasonable time to write directly to Pope Leo. And that's an easy address, right? Pope Leo, 00120 Vatican City, to express that you nonetheless, and in some cases even more so, believe that now would be a time for a solemn definition. Again, not that we're expecting this today or tomorrow, but the letters coming in, I think, could be important to say what many of a broadcaster have said. Is this a final word on the issue of the title, co-redemptrix, or the doctrine of Mediatrix of all graces? The answer is absolutely not. It's a doctrinal note from a doctrinal office. Respect, definitely. Final note, absolutely not. What are final notes? Where are those best conveyed? Through papal definitions. And that would be, I think, ideal, because I do not think this conversation is going to go away soon. So we continue in peace. Continue to pray for our Holy Father and for his discernment, and continue to petition, if one desires so, to write him. Always respectfully, my friends, you're writing to our Father. So keep a respect and keep a filial love, which all the saints had for our Holy Father. I mean, St. Catherine of Siena called the Holy Father, my sweet Jesus on earth. And her Holy Father at the time was in Avignon, and she had to go and was instrumental in bringing him back to Rome. So he wasn't a perfect manifestation of Peter necessarily, nor, by the way, are we perfect manifestations of the people of God either. So free from judgment, but newly galvanized, because now it's a global discussion. Let's hope that honestly, without any sarcasm or negativity, let's hope that the proper sense of synodality now kicks in, that we do have an ongoing discussion of that, which I believe ultimately will lead to a solemn definition, because it's simply a truth that merits infallibility. It's a truth that the world needs to know, that they have a spiritual mother in our Blessed Mother. You have that mother. I have that mother. The whole world has that mother, and the world needs to know that. And when we acknowledge her as such, there will be a historic release of grace, which will lead to the triumph of the Immaculate Heart as revealed at Fatima. And that too, we will need more and more as the days continue. Thanks for being with us at Mary Live. God bless you all.